You're listening to the Control System Integrators Association's Talking Industrial Automation podcast, where you get to know the people that make modern manufacturing and processing possible. Now, here is your host, Tony Verhoeven.
Thanks for downloading the Talking Industrial Automation podcast. This is a show to help you get to know the people that make modern manufacturing and processing possible. I'll be talking industrial automation with CSIA system integrators and industry partners to get a better understanding of how they help their clients solve manufacturing and process challenges, and how they became successful in their careers. Along the way, we will touch on system integration best practices, technology, trends, and challenges. Whether you are a manufacturer, end user, supplier, or system integrator, I hope you will enjoy the insights CSIA members will bring to this podcast. Hi, it's Tony Verhoeven, and we're talking industrial automation with Jason Andersen of Stratus. How are you doing, Jason?
Doing great today. Nice to see you, Tony.
Good to see you. Thanks so much for taking a few minutes or several minutes here. We'll have a good conversation, I think, this afternoon here. It is late March here. We're just a few weeks away from our conference. And you guys are supporters of, you guys have been members of ours for a few years, right?
That's right. We've been a member for a few years. We're actually going to be exhibiting at the conference in a few weeks, and pretty excited to be there again.
Excellent. Well, we're looking forward to having you. So, well, Jason, what do you do? Let's talk about what do you do at Stratus, and maybe just kind of blend that into what Stratus does and how you help system integrators in this space and also end users.
Sure, absolutely. So we'll start with me. I guess I'm what they call the Vice President of Business Line Management, which kind of is a title that's, I think, a bit unique. It really means I wear a few different hats here at Stratus, and one of which is product management and product marketing. So I'm responsible for keeping the product roadmaps up to date, getting products out the door. But I also have kind of a bit of a bigger role where I have been working really on the company's strategy and where we take the business. And that's been probably over the last couple of years the more interesting part of the job. We've been in business now for nearly 40 years, and I'd say up until about 2 years ago, we were a very kind of a typical horizontally aligned technology platforms company. And about 2 years ago, we started to really dig into what types of end users are buying our solutions and where can we find the most kind of growth. As you can probably guess, being in the technology, hardware, software world, with everything that's going on with cloud and everything else, I think companies are kind of faced with new types of challenges in terms of getting closer to their customers and really kind of building products for them versus products for kind of, a broader market. And so over the last couple of years, we've really started to fortify and build out our industrial and edge business, which now represents the majority of our net new product sales. So it's been this kind of nice transformation for us, going from a very horizontally focused company to something that's kind of, we focus in on a couple key markets and really are seeing great results from that change.
Excellent. So how do you guys approach, I guess what's unique about how you guys approach the industrial automation industry, and maybe if there's any particular industries, verticals that you guys work with?
So I would say that, well, let's just start with the big picture, is that industrial automation is our largest market segment for our hardware and software platforms. So it's actually the largest for both. So, we do a lot of business there. And what we build or have been building for the last few years has been, or for the last 30 plus years, has been fully redundant computing platforms, whether it's software-based or hardware-based. We tend to do more hardware business around the world than software, and the notion really goes back to our very early days of our existence, where we started to recognize that computing would be put in places outside of IT's hands. And the example we'll use kind of in the very earliest days of the company was kind of the telecommunications sector, where we had all these little carrier offices and landline networks all over the place. And we realized that we could put a system out there that wouldn't fail, but it also, if it did fail or if it was needing to be serviced, it had to be serviced in a very easy way by a non-IT resource. So that was kind of the very beginning of the company, way, way back when. Since then, I think we've been able to maintain that type of capability. And over the last 10 years, we've seen our business in industrial automation, particularly oil and gas, wastewater, food and beverage, more the process side of industrial automation. That business has been growing very steadily because of this focus on kind of the operational aspects, right? Making it easy for somebody to replace it or service it, and make it easy for us to keep it running all the time. Quite frankly, that's kind of the bedrock of what we do, is keep it running all the time. But in the event that serviceability is required, we make it very easy for that operator to do. And that's really kind of what makes us different than, say, other technology companies. As we look forward, we're actually looking to take that to an entirely new set of platforms and a new set of capabilities, because the truth is that we're finding is we're now moving from a world of low touch computing at the edge to no touch computing at the edge. And that no touch computing is, you might have an operations person in a carrier, a central office or a carrier office for a landline telephone network, but in a mobile network, with a tower, there's nobody there. Right? There's nobody there, and they're not visiting very often to maintain it or service it. It's the same thing in energy, where we do a lot of business in the energy sector as well, like electrical power generation. They have people in the control room there, but at a solar farm or wind farm, they don't. Right? So we have to kind of take our existing capabilities and take them to an entirely new level, where we go from low touch to zero touch, if you will.
Okay, great. So when you're talking about computing, let's maybe dig into that a little bit for maybe people who don't understand maybe how that translates into a plant or some sort of a rig or something like that here. So what does that mean to a manufacturer and kind of what your platform and your computing power and your cloud computing?
So what we do is we build server computers or operating systems. Right, we have our own kind of dedicated operating system that will provide a redundant computer system running on any Intel-based hardware. But we also have a hardware platform that supports a wide range of operating systems, like Windows and Linux and VMware and all those things, where there's like I said, it's a hardware-based platform, very kind of turnkey, set it and forget it. What that allows people to do, and I would say the gross majority of our industrial or our edge business is using some sort of SCADA historian application. Right, so people are taking and running SCADA on the plant floor, or SCADA out on an oil rig, or a historian or an analytics type of application. They're deploying that on our servers, whether they be, again, hardware class or software class. They're deploying it on that, and then they're running those things, running those applications all the time, right? So they have to be running all the time to collect the data or to manage alerts or those types of things. And that's really the majority of our business, is SCADA, historian, and HMI. Those are the three areas where we play the most. We do a bit of MES types of applications as well. And then we do some other kind of custom applications that may have been built either very vertically aligned and specific, or something that might have been homegrown by a particular ISV or a company themselves.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
So Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, that was it.
Okay. So it comes down to obviously being able to 24/7 reliability, right? I mean, that's super important.
Right. Well, it's in addition, absolutely, that's what it's all about. But we've found that a lot of our customers also respond very well to how we service the product. So we've built a lot of capability and logic into the product itself. So if the product starts, I would say it's predictive, right? It's kind of a predictive type of maintenance type of solution, where, let's say the product starts to see some anomalies in how it's operating. Let's say, I'll give you a good example is, let's say we have FT Server, which is our hardware product, running out in a gas compression station on a natural gas pipeline. Okay. And one of its hard drives starts to act a little funny, like, the spin rate is off or something. We're monitoring that system. We've built the logic into the system to go, hey, I think I'm having a problem with this hard drive. So then the system we calls us. It actually calls Stratus and says, hey, I got a problem here. I think I got a hard drive that's going to fail. I'm going to do two things. First off, I'm going to log a support ticket with Stratus so we can send you a replacement automatically, right? No people involved. And then they initiate the process to fail that system over. So that way, when that drive does fail, you're running on a fresh, brand new, redundant failover system. So basically, like I said, we've kind of built the smarts into our solutions to allow that to happen, right? So we cause the failover to happen, we log the ticket, and then we take it from there, right? So again, it could be pretty much a zero-touch type of operation with how we do it, but it's really the combination of that redundancy, fault-tolerant type of technology that we've built into the product, along with this really great automated process for servicing it as well.
Yeah, so predictive maintenance is something I'm hearing quite a bit about from our members and obviously in the media, in the industrial automation world. So that's super important because what you're doing out there is trying to, or not trying to, what you're executing upon is there's no downtime where you're like, oops, it's down. We haven't been logging data. We haven't been producing widgets. Right? It's an important to say, hey, this thing's about to fail. Now I can create a plan around winding the server down, getting something else to take over for it while I send a tech out to sort this thing out.
Yeah, because the system, like I said, since there's two systems running all the time, the other system's picked up. And then the tech is really coming out to replace the broken one, if that's the case. But you're absolutely right. What's interesting though is you bring up the points about predictive. And everything you said is true, but it's actually getting more complicated in a couple different levels, right? The first level is what I'll call regulatory and compliance. Like I said, I have a lot of energy, oil and gas, wastewater, those types of clients. And those end users, what we see all the time is they go, it's not the failure that's the problem. It's the paperwork you have to do to kind of, when something fails, right, you have to put in all these reports and file things. And, some of the time, some of these failure instances cost, in some cases, like in the natural gas industry, can cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, right, for a failure. So they're trying to failure proof that entire pipeline, not just the computing resource, but also everything else, right?
Sure.
But, you take it one step further, and then what's happening now is that the real kind of gold in this whole thing is analytics, because analytics ultimately is the driver of machine learning. It's going to be the driver of artificial intelligence. It's going to be the driver of, further automation of the process, to make the rest of the process, not just the computing processes, zero touch. So the truth is what I'd say what's kind of looming on the horizon with predictive is it's not just preventing downtime from happening at the system level or the process level. It's also basically preserving and maintaining the integrity of that analytics and data that's associated with it so the machine can continue to run. If you really think about it, analytics is ultimately kind of the sensory stimuli that an artificial intelligence engine would need. Just like, your eyes or your ears, you're hearing and taking in data all the time through those senses, and that allows you to make cognitive decisions. That's what analytics is to AI. So think about it that way. If in the future, as people start to look at machine learning and AI type of technologies, you're not gonna want to lose your senses at any point, right? I mean, that's something people, so it's kind of a very similar analogy in that way.
Right. So for an end user who's listening, I guess what are some of the things that they're going to, I guess, bring up or be challenged with maybe using a computing solution or wanting to enable or employ analytics and predictive maintenance? What are some of the things that they're challenged with?
Well, I think, it's kind of funny. We're at a funny point in the whole kind of Internet of Things world / evolution, right? And I think that there's this there's a lot of misinformation out there. I mean, to be honest. So one of the things we've observed is that, there's a lot of people out there who think they can just kind of plug in a very simple kind of, gateway-like device and pop it in, and then that's going to connect to a cloud, and, all my problems will be solved. And the truth is that those types of devices, have utility, especially if you're kind of pumping some analytics up into a cloud and doing all your analytics in the cloud. There's utility to that. But, the problem is that data analytics and essentially computing, it's like one of those kind of things where once you get a little bit, you keep adding more and more and more. So I think one of the challenges out there is there's some people in the world who are like, well, this is easy. All I have to do is plug in this gateway and we're all set. It's clearly more complicated than that. So the flip side is that then you go to the other extreme, which is kind of what a lot of the larger you're talking heavy machinery manufacturers, automotive, things like that. Those people are actually building like little mini data centers in their facilities and in their plants. And, they're probably needing like, constant curation, security patching happening every week, and, systems all over the place and racks of servers. And that's very complicated and expensive. So I think the challenge is that the market and the technology vendors themselves are either selling very complicated solutions or kind of very simple solutions. And the truth is that the majority of the people are kind of somewhere in between. So I think when I talk to customers a lot, what we try to do is show them kind of, we really don't get into the technology right away. What we really talk to them about is how can we simplify this whole process for you, right? Like, how, if you're an operator and you're kind of responsible for running these plant operations or running, being in charge of these various remote edge sites, it's like, how what are the things that kind of, keep you up at night? What are the things you want to work on and make sure? And by and large, they always come back with kind of 2 or 3 points. The first is, I want this to be easy, and I just want to kind of set it and forget it, right? So you can't do that with a big rack of servers, right? You can do it with the little things, but now we'll get to the next point, which is, I'm going to deploy this for a really long period of time. I mean, we hear that from everybody, right? There's nobody out there who's approaching this like kind of your traditional IT data center with a 3 to 4 year replacement life cycle, which is what you see when you go into your traditional, I'm sure my guys here at Stratus, my IT department, they replace their gear every 3 or 4 years. Out at the edge, they're putting that stuff out there, as part of a project that might last 10 plus years or more, right? So what we're encouraging people to do is go, okay, how do we simplify your life? And then how do we position you to grow in the future? And I think that that's where you start looking at kind of some of the newer technologies that are showing up at the edge, like virtualization. You're starting to see new applications come to the edge, like analytics. And you say, well, how can I collect data here and process it in the cloud? But you really have to get that kind of level set first, and then you start moving into the future. And you have to kind of then say, well, I kind of understand that your roadmap for the future is going to take a few years to play out. So let's make sure we not only bring in a solution that's going to be with you for the long haul, but also is going to, solve your problems today. And when you have that conversation, it becomes a business discussion. It becomes a production discussion versus like, walking in and saying you need 16 cores or, 2 terabytes of drive. That doesn't matter. What matters is kind of getting to the heart of the problem. So that's how we do it. And people respond really well to it, right? Because it's more of a solution-oriented approach. I would say that by and large, we are not having those discussions with end customers alone. We're having them with systems integrators, engineering firms, and sometimes distributors, right? So we never tend to go it alone at Stratus with the industrial customer. We partner up because we think at the end of the day, we bring a great technology. The partner brings a great set of skills and knowledge and industry understanding. And, between those two and the end customer, we think that's going to be the most productive and cost-effective solution ultimately.
Right. Because what what a system integrator is doing is they're bringing probably several solutions to an end user. You're just part of the puzzle, right? Or
you bet.
One of the several things. So, do you find that system integrators are kind of maybe that translator of all the things? Because we talked a lot of geeky stuff just now, right? We heavy duty stuff, but that's stuff that doesn't really translate into what a customer, right? If you're a plant operator, or you're water wastewater operator, or plant manager, that you're like, okay, what does all that mean? How does that translate into me staying up and being able to go on vacation, right? And trusting my assistant, right? That's really what it means, right? Yeah,
no, it's exactly what it means. And we find we exactly what you're saying is the level of trust and relationship that SIs, engineering firms have with the end customer is huge. I mean, look, everybody's been through it. I've been in the industry, I didn't start in industrial automation. I started in enterprise IT software, been in this industry a long time, but really I've only focused on the edge and IA, for my tenure here at Stratus the last 4 years. So before that, and everybody's been through projects with technology where things don't work or it doesn't work as advertised or whatever. And the truth is that those things happen, right? Technology isn't always perfect. So it's that personal element where there's a relationship between the ultimate end user and the implementer that's so key to get over those hassles and get through those problems and work it out. And then we're supporting those guys and gals out there to do that, right? We're supporting the SI and making sure that they're successful with our technology. So that's a big part of our kind of, for lack of a better term, that's how we get to customers. We don't, like I said, we're not out there selling this stuff on Amazon or just kind of bundling it into some sort of solution from a vendor. It's really kind of this partnership.
What are you guys involved kind of in a security solution as well? Is that kind of built in, or do you partner with another kind of specialized security company that kind of lays on top of your stuff?
So a month or so ago, we just announced that we're coming out with an entirely new product line that we call ZTC. ZTC is, like I mentioned, we've been on this kind of transformation in the last couple of years to build to kind of move our business and focus more on specific edge cases. ZTC is our edge optimized product line. And we are planning to come out with a set of security features in this calendar year. So the short answer is we don't have any very specific tailored towards edge operations security features in our existing product lines. The new one, V1, ships in a couple months. And then later on this year, we're actually going to be releasing a whole host of cybersecurity features specifically for that product. Now, security is kind of funny, though. Security has a lot of layers to it, and there's a lot of different ways to secure a system. So what we're doing is we're being very, I would say, prescriptive about what we're going to put into our solution versus where we're going to partner. So I think what I want to make really clear is that to any end customers, I think Stratus will have cybersecurity capability in its products very soon. But we're going to partner with cybersecurity firms and with systems integrators who already have relationships with those firms to kind of deliver a robust, kind of more encompassing solution, because we don't think we can be all things to all people in the security space. So we want to just kind of say, well, here's the functionality we're going to provide. You partner up with somebody who's doing device management or something like that. That's not going to be in our wheelhouse, but we'll work with somebody and certify their solution to work with us, and we'll bring that to market through an SI or somebody like that. So it's coming. Guys,
oh yeah, go ahead.
It's coming. We've been thinking about it. I mean, we've been talking about it now pretty much constantly since the holidays, and we're getting there. We'll have, like I said, I gave you a preview, but I think come summertime we'll have a much more robust set of descriptions for you. Excellent.
Are you guys directly involved kind of in a project implementation? Is a system integrator or an engineering firm kind of bringing you in, or do they get certified in your stuff and they take care of everything and you're just supporting there? Where are you guys in relation to an actual project installation for a customer?
It really depends on where we're delivering the solution around the globe and what the level of, I'll call it, sophistication of the partner is. So I'd say that in Asia, our edge and industrial business is pretty hands off. We OEM technology to vendors and they handle it, and we support them in terms of them building a solution around which we're a component. Here in the United States and to a certain extent in Europe, I'd say that it varies, but I'd say we tend to be somewhat involved, not fully involved, but somewhat involved in the solution. So when a systems integrator would go and propose a solution to a customer of which we are a component, I'd say there's probably, I don't know, maybe a 40 to 50% chance that we would be working alongside that system integrator to ensure that we're successfully deployed. The rest of the time, as we've built relationships with the SIs and distributors around, some of the higher end distributors, like say, for instance, in the Rockwell or GE ecosystems, or to a certain extent now with Aviva, Wonderware/Aviva, we've worked with all those ecosystems, and I'd say that over the years we've built up a certain sophistication where maybe some of those partners are going it by themselves more often, and we're just supporting them when they get stuck versus every time. So it varies, but like I said, the other variables where in the globe it's deployed.
Very good.
Yeah.
So when it comes down to, I said the 40 or 50% where you are involved, is there anything unique about how you're handling those situations, how you're approaching a project with the customer?
I'd say I wouldn't say terribly unique. I think we kind of see some recurring themes. One recurring theme we see is that they may want some sort of special integration between our product and maybe something in their data center. So let's say they have I mentioned that we have this kind of very unique monitoring and service capability, but some customers still want to do that themselves, right, which is completely fine. So they may say, well, we want you to integrate FT server to go talk to our management backend or to our service help desk offering, or we want to connect your system that's running this SCADA to another system. So I'd say that, in the terms of the ones where we get requests for help, I think it's more about kind of connectivity and integration versus us doing anything very customized, right? So it's kind of like, make this work with my stuff type of arguments versus, anything else.
Got it. So have there been any interesting, challenging projects, installations, situations that you've run into recently?
Well, I think kind of, we've seen some kind of interesting stuff happen out in the field for sure. And some of that has led to kind of what we're going to be releasing in May, to be honest with you. So we've had one of the things that's kind of like a blessing to an end customer, not always a blessing to Stratus, is that we've been building these platforms that are very, very reliable, but nonetheless, they may not necessarily be set up for certain environmental problems, right? So we've had some customers here in the U.S. that put us into kind of shop floor. They're not putting us in a rack. They're just taking a rack mount server and putting it kind of anywhere. And we'll have, issues with dust, people stuff getting into the system, and over time that just knocks the system out. I was in Asia last year. I heard that in Southeast Asia is obviously very warm and very humid. So we heard a story about how one of my FT servers, which is a pretty beefy, it's about 110 pound 4U server enclosure that usually sits in a rack, was deployed in a bathroom. All right. So because it was the only place in the whole facility that was able to, not overheat the box. So that was, so I'd say that a lot of the times when we hear funny stuff, I guess it's environmental. And then, the really kind of outrageous stuff. We've also seen some interesting things happen with respect to just the software operating and integrating. So like I said, that's not necessarily kind of, as interesting, but it does happen where, we have to kind of hook it together. And then one thing that we're pretty good about, I would say, is that when somebody calls us with a problem, one thing we're not a huge company, in terms of, we're a good sized company. We have 440 employees all over the world. So we're not a tiny company, but when you compare us to, say, an HP or a Dell, who has, literally tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people, we have a different profile. So when somebody calls us for service, we pretty much run it down. Like, even if it's a problem like with Microsoft that we can't solve, we'll be harassing Microsoft on your behalf versus you having, it's like, oh, not our problem, hang up, right? We don't work that way. So I'd say that, we do have some technology funny stuff that happens, but I always get a kick out of the ones about stuff being put in weird places like bathrooms and places that have so much dust from making ceramics that you couldn't. So that's why the new stuff is all fanless and solid state, so we can pretty much hang it up on a wall and put it anywhere and it won't break, right? Because at the end of the day, if they're paying for a service contract from us, it's on us to fix it. So we're trying to kind of keep you running and keep us in the black, if you will, in the service business. So.
Funny things that I see on especially like LinkedIn are these pictures where a control system engineer will go in and take a picture of what the last guy wired or did.
Oh yeah,
things, and it's pretty entertaining. And I'm no electrician, but sometimes you can only spot the things there. Kind of like in the old days, you've heard of people taking a 22 shell and making it a fuse, in your car.
Oh yeah, yeah. There's plenty of that. The networking side of things. A lot of times, what we see, especially with some of our larger customers, is when they're doing some sort of refresh or upgrade to a facility or a plant or whatever, they start with networking. So by the time we show up, that problem has already been somewhat solved. But I mean, we do hear the stories from our partners, the systems integrators involved in that. But a lot of times we'll hear since we have virtualization inherent in our current products and our future products, a lot of times we'll hear the stories about how many servers they were running and how old the servers were. They'll be running a critical SCADA application on a 10-year-old desktop, and now we're going to turn that into a virtual machine and run it alongside of a bunch of other applications. So, I was in Africa last year, and one of our big customers in Africa is the Namibian breweries, who we have a great video on our website. But I mean, they were running that brewery, which I would say is kind of like to give it, to kind of put it in reference of a U.S. type of thing. Think of them as maybe more like a large regional, like you're out in Madison, Leinenkugels, or up here on the East Coast, a Harpoon. They're that size. They're not Budweiser or something like that. They were running an entire, couple major brewing sites with 10 servers each, with 2 people or a person and a half effectively. And it was like, so when we hear those stories, we're like, wow, we got them down to 1 server with 1 box. So, I'd say that's probably the one thing we technologically run into the most, is that people have band-aided solution on top of it. Like your wiring story with computers, the same with computers. They'll keep adding more and more stuff to it. They don't touch the old stuff. They just leave it. And then all of a sudden something breaks. They don't know what broke. They call us up or they call one of our partners in, and we're just like, you know what? Let's just scrap the whole thing and start over and get you into, instead of running 10 of these things, run 1 or 2 or 3 and get them, consolidated in a much better place. So I think that's one thing that it's funny, because it's so accepted in the enterprise IT world, is, the consolidation effects of virtualization and all this other stuff. It really hasn't hit the edge as hard and as quickly as maybe we thought. We're still going all over the place and finding these scenarios where just that will save, it doesn't matter if you're buying it from Stratus or somebody else, but just that alone is like a game changer for some of these folks. And they really haven't had the uptick that we would have expected. We've been talking about it for 5 years, and we're still running into it,
What are some of the things that, kind of get you out of bed in the morning? What's really cool going on in this space right now?
There's a few things. I mean, one of the things, I didn't mention this before, but I did mention that I was in the software, enterprise IT software for a long time before coming to Stratus. And I worked at Red Hat, who, kind of nice to see they had their 25th anniversary yesterday. I'm really proud to have been part of that for a few years. And so when I look at what's going on with the Open Group, what they're working on out there in terms of trying to come up with some standardization of, kind of how to kind of update and maintain these DCS systems, and how they're going to kind of invent a next generation network. That I think that's exciting, because, it's a little bit of where I came from, open standards, open source. That's an area where technologically I'm very interested. So I think that's very promising. The other thing that kind of gets me excited is to see the evolution of some of our partners, and how they're trying out new things. We were talking, I have one partner that we work with. We have an excellent relationship with them, and they are now inventing products, right? So instead of it being, hey, I'm a systems integrator, I'm going to go out and kind of sell services and kind of service you, individual client, they're now taking that knowledge and they're building their own products. So they're building their own service offerings. I got to tell you, to me, that's super exciting. That just shows that there's a market opportunity. There's a chance for people to make money here. There's a chance for people to take their business maybe where they didn't take it before. And at the end of the day, end customers want to buy packaged solutions. They don't want things custom built for themselves. So it's good for the partner. It's good for the end customer. And frankly, I think it's really exciting because it shows a certain level of vibrancy. So I'd say that to me is actually even a little more exciting than the more kind of open group stuff, which I think is a little further out. They're making good progress, but it'll take time. But to see some of these guys invent spin-off businesses or come up with entirely new product offerings. We're talking to one, I just spent the day talking with somebody yesterday about them building out their own cybersecurity practice and their own cybersecurity offering, and talking about what the opportunities were. Maybe we could be part of it. Maybe, we're still working that out, but that just was awesome. We were super excited about it.
Very good. Well, Jason, let's shift gears here a little bit. Here we've been talking tech and talking some really cool stuff and things that are out in the market here. Let's talk about you a little bit here.
Sure.
Where did you grow up?
Oh, I grew up in Connecticut, so I'm like a lifelong Northeastern guy. I live here in, we're in Maynard, Massachusetts today, Stratus headquarters. So I've lived in Massachusetts since I was 18, so 26, 27 years now. My wife and I lived in New York City for a couple of years. That's when she called our time down in the deep South. So we're kind of both born and bred New Englanders. So we'll be stuck here in the cold for a little while longer.
Very good. And so all these other NFL fans, especially the NFC East, are just giving you a hard, or the AFC East are just giving you a hard time about your Pats, right? Here, that's all you hear.
I don't know. All good things must come to an end. I mean, I think my son's about to turn 10, right? He has no concept of what it's like to have a bad sports team, right? Trust me, when I was young, I knew all about bad sports teams. I grew up in Hartford. I had the Whalers. We had the Patriots, who weren't that good. I had to live through, how many years of the Red Sox. So, I mean, if whatever happens, it was tough. It was a tough loss for the Patriots, but, we'll see what they do. We'll see if Brady, what happens. I don't know. We'll see. Yeah. But like I said, I'm not the type of guy who's going to get upset by not winning a sixth. I'm happy with the 5 we got. If we get more, fabulous. If not, I think hats off to the team over there in Philly too. I mean, backup quarterback, they pulled it out. They won.
Great story. Same thing with the, we're in Madison, Wisconsin, so this is Packerland here, and so. Not as many Super Bowls, but they definitely have been super competitive. And so this year, a lot of broken hearts, and calls for the noose for the management here. So like you said, maybe a whole generation of folks who are just not used to, not having, or not used to having, a team that didn't make it.
But I mean, anyway. I've had the pleasure of going out there, and being at Lambeau. I'll tell you what, I mean, it doesn't matter if they win. That's a great place to watch a game. What a great experience. So, it's good times.
100%. Yeah. So you were born in Connecticut and then grew up in Massachusetts. I guess, well, your adult life was in Massachusetts.
Yeah. I went to college up here and I haven't really left except for, like I said, for our 2 years of exile in New York City.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So where did you go to school?
Oh, Worcester Polytech. Yeah. Worcester Polytech.
And what did you get a degree in? What did you study?
Well, I started in engineering. I ended up wrapping up with kind of a what they call a MIS degree, which is kind of a combination of business and computer science. Yeah, so
gotcha.
Kind of saw the light, halfway through school and changed to computers.
and so kind of take me from young Jason, maybe getting out of school with an MIS to interest to now obviously 4 years ago where you're obviously deeply embedded in kind of this industrial automation space. How did you get kind of from that kind of purely IT side to kind of where you're at today?
Well, it's kind of funny. I think I have a certain degree of understanding of kind of the SIs and things like that, because I actually started in a IT systems integrator distributor world. That's kind of where I spent the first few years of my career. And I was out there, installing gear and doing projects and setting up networks and that type of work. And then I, interestingly enough, I went from the consulting world into sales for a while. And then I got into products and, how long have I been doing product work? I would say probably 15 years now. So maybe a little more, maybe a little less, maybe a little more. So I got into that, and for me, it was really no looking back. I really like to kind of break down the customer problem and find creative ways to solve it. So that's been kind of how it's been going. I was in kind of big, humongous software companies for a while, and I really started to buy into the idea of openness and transparency, which got me to Red Hat. And then, the Stratus story and the edge stuff, that was really kind of, what to be honest, what happened was Stratus came to me and said, "Hey, we're kind of an old school hardware company. We want to get more into the world of software, and we like what can you come in and help us figure that out?" And really, it took us a good year or so before we said, this IA thing, we're already doing great there. Why not do more? And that was kind of the beginning of that for me. So I kind of didn't necessarily plan to get into this particular part of the industry, but I'll tell you, I find it super exciting. So I'm kind of glad I got here. Kind of glad we stumbled into it. And a lot of what I've done over the years is try to when I've been in product again is that to kind of transform and invent new products to do that. So that's what we're trying to do. And like I said, I can't be more happy with how the Stratus team has transformed itself. I mean, it's we're starting to operate more and more like a startup, when the truth is we're a 38-year-old company, and and we have kind of a different, we're not a venture capital backed company. So the fact that the team has stepped up the way they have and kind of made the vision of a few of us a reality is sort of amazing. So that's been really good for us.
Very good. So I like to ask our members, how do they become maybe technically minded here? What did your parents do? Or were they engineers or mechanically?
No. For me, it's funny. For me, it started out in as a kid. My parents weren't very technical, still aren't. I mean, for me, it was just, I walked into a classroom one day, maybe I was my son's age. I was in 4th grade. So my son's in 4th grade. I walked into a room and there was a computer just sitting there, and I just started beating the hell out of it. And fortunately, I had a couple good mentors along the way who said, this is what it is. So, I mean, if you think about it, the age I'm at, I'm walking into a room in 82 or whatever, and there's a Tandy sitting there, and there was no turning back. It just, I kind of briefly, like I said, when I got to the college level, I kind of briefly dilly-dallied around with physics and nuclear engineering and stuff like that. But, I went right back to computers. It just was, so yeah, it's always been that way for me. Like I said, but I don't think it certainly wasn't something I inherited.
It's kind of amazing. Yesterday, I ran across this video. It was 1981, I think. It was Ted Koppel, and a very young Steve Jobs was getting interviewed by Ted Koppel, and so it was all about the computer is going to take over our life.
Yeah.
And it even talked about automation. And it was just an interesting of like, you get past the hairstyles and the wow amazement of what a computer is in the early 80s. But it was really amazing. In fact, I would recommend, if you're listening to this, just go Google, Nightline, Ted Koppel, Steve Jobs interview. And it's really fascinating because you talk about how things really have changed. I think, younger kids who, like we talked about, who they've never experienced a certain thing. They've never experienced what it was like, I guess, beforehand of not having computing in our everyday life. So it was really interesting to see everything kind of holds up to, things have come true, I guess, in these predictions of how automation has become computing based, and things have, been taken, quote unquote, taken over.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, we recently just started getting those Alexa things in the house, and holy smokes, that's a whole different thing. You just, and it's funny because, I think the perspective you just gave is perfect and spot on, because if you think about like Netflix and other consumer technologies, how people were saying this stuff, like, Bill Gates wrote a book, called The Road Ahead, like, almost 20 years ago. And he was predicting stuff like, you're going to be able to watch any movie you want on demand at any time. And it was like, now, not only can you do it, you can just yell out in the middle of your living room, "Hey, Alexa, put this movie on." It happens, right? It shows right up on your TV. So yeah, it's kind of, it's neat to see. It's actually neat to see when the futurists are right? So that's pretty cool.
I remember even 12 or 15 years ago, how they said that, TV will be on your phones. So we all had mobile phones at the time. This is probably 2003 or 4. We had mobile phones, they're pretty ubiquitous at that point. Although, the iPhone wasn't out yet, but I had no clue if that, we'd be watching YouTube TV or Netflix and watch. I had no way will somebody want to watch, TV on this.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Here we are.
And I think the funniest thing for me is how, I think now that the capabilities are there, I think that people's expectations are totally changing. I mean, one of the design points we have with the new product is have it up and running in 30 minutes or less. And if you think about it, if you go out and you go get an Xbox for your kids or something, or you buy a new TV, or you hook up one of these Alexa devices, you got it up and running in minutes, right? It ain't that way in the computer world. Like, it isn't that way in the rest of the computer industry. And to me, that's kind of like, in terms of what brings me into Stratus every morning, that's a problem we're trying to solve, right? The new product, it's like you plug them both in, you hook them up together, you hit a couple buttons, and you're off to the races. So we built that in as a design point. But to me, that's the part that, from my team's perspective, that's exciting me, because we're doing it. And I think about like how we did that because we think people's expectations have changed, right? We think that if you're an operator or you're a field tech or you're whatever, you're not going to read through you're not going to read through a big book to figure out how to do your job anymore. You just kind of expect it to work, right? And so we're trying to solve that problem here at Stratus, but I just think it's something that it's funny to me how the consumer world has really adopted it and made it happen, but the kind of corporate world hasn't. And I scratch my head. I just don't get that, right? In startups you kind of see it, and the people who really use cloud technologies, like the people who are using like Amazon or Azure extensively, they do. But yeah, that's the next big. I think that's the next big shift in corporate America is there'll be more consumerization, right, versus more complexity.
So why hasn't that happened in the corporate world? And what are some of the barriers, I guess, to making it just plugging in a couple, industrial servers and making it just happen? Not that we want to put system integrators out of business, but why hasn't that happened yet?
Well, excuse me a second. Well, I'd say that I'll give you three reasons. I think the first reason is, I'll give the corporate reason first. I think the corporate reason is really driven by I think it has to do with a kind of business alignment. I think it's a business thing. It's not a technology thing. People are I've been through 1 million technology selection meetings, and people come in and they have this list of requirements. And quite frankly, say half of those requirements really aren't that necessary. So what's happening is people build these very complicated, overcomplicated solutions. And the only way you could possibly do that is kind of build your own. So I think that's part of the problem in the corporate world. When it gets down to the system integrator level, when I talk to them, they want the infrastructure to be that easy. They don't want to install computers and burn a bunch of hours setting them up. What they want to do is figure out how to get all the I/O paths set up correctly so they're collecting data. They want to figure out how to kind of build the logic into the solution to make the solution better. So to me, I look at it like I'm trying to give them the most stable, reliable, as well as easy to operate platform as possible. They can take that and then they can actually go and do higher value things for their end customer versus lower value stuff. And so, if you take those two data points I just gave you, you can kind of maybe jump to a conclusion, and I think you should, is that a lot of this is driven by job security, right? Is that, I think there's a lot of people out there who are going, well, I want it to be complicated because that allows me to, hire more people and get a bigger budget and all that other stuff. There isn't really necessarily an award for the guy or department leader who, makes life simplest. Right. So I think there's some definite kind of corporate governance, way we do things, types of decision points that are really what's preventing from the adoption of these kind of more consumer technology. Oh, it's scary. I can argue, maybe everybody's not using a tablet in the office because there isn't good security technology for that tablet, but it doesn't have to be the same as what I have on my Mac or you have on your server. It's probably a different thing. So that's, it's kind of that. So I think that's what's gumming it up a bit.
Gotcha,
it's always people.
Gotcha.
It's never technology. It's always people.
Right. It's Adam Smith's invisible hand applying forces.
Yeah, there you go. Right.
So tell me, as we're kind of wrapping up here, how do you spend your first 90 minutes of your day? Just thinking as an executive of I would say a large company. How do you spend your first 90 minutes of your day, and how do you spend your Sunday evenings?
Oh, okay. Well, I guess for me, I'm a little different, I guess. For me, I really look at it, my day starts when I get up. Like, there's kind of what happens when I get to work. But to be honest, when I get here, I generally kick off the day with some sort of meeting with either my team or some other group to kind of get something rolling, right? So I really look at my day starting before I get to the office, right? So I'm an early riser. If I'd say more days than not, I work out. I'm crazy into cycling. So I'm right this time of year, I'm hammering it away in the basement, but usually I'm out on my bike, even if with lights on and everything to get it on the morning.
Road bike?
Yeah. Road, cyclocross, gravel. Yeah. All that stuff. Then I get to, then I tend to, this year, my resolution, to be honest, think of that as my first hour you said 90 minutes, right? First hour is some sort of workout, biking or whatever. I'd say then you get a kind of another half hour of what I'll call meditation, thinking time. I'll sit down and kind of put together a plan for my day, and then the next bit of time in that 90 minutes I'll be doing preparing either my lunch or my son's lunch or my wife's I'll do some cooking, whatever that might be, and then it's off to work I go. And to be honest, a lot of times here in the morning I'm right into the fire. So if I don't prep for the day, I come in here and I'm not ready to go. And in Stratus, you kind of got to be ready to go. I tend to have more time in the afternoon to do stuff like this or sit down and think and write and kind of plan. Sunday night, honest to God, I try to unplug from everything. I don't, so I know a lot of, I work with a lot of folks who will take time to kind of get ahead of the week and do things on that. For me, that's kind of my last gasp of rest before I get thrown into the fray. So for me, Sunday night, Sunday afternoon is pretty sacred. I try to do as much with family and kind of relax as possible, knowing full well that the work will be here when I get here.
It always is.
Yeah.
Very good. Well, Jason, I really appreciate you taking so much time this afternoon here. I know you're not slacking in the afternoons. I know you're busy in the morning, but definitely afternoons, you're not slacking any other. So I appreciate your valuable time.
Sure. Thank you. I appreciate it. Great times. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Jason Andersen, Stratus, and we will see you guys at the conference. Thanks so much for your time. If you enjoy the podcast, please subscribe in iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, or wherever you listen to podcasts. We'd also appreciate a like, share, and comments about what you hear. Visit csiaexchange.com/podcast for a full list of episodes, to subscribe, or to contact us. We'd like to hear what topics you want to learn about and who you'd like to hear from. Music provided by bensound.com under a Creative Commons license. This is a production of the Control System Integrators Association, CSIA.
Thanks for listening to the Talking Industrial Automation podcast. Read the Industrial Automation blog and find and research qualified system integrators at csiaexchange.com. For more information on why your system integrator should be CSIA certified, visit controlsys.org, controlsys.org.